Welcome back. While former President Trump is in the Motor City on Wednesday, presidential hopefuls will spar at the second primary debate in California at the Reagan Library. The former president continues to have a commanding 43-point average lead in the race, according to the Real Clear Politics average of polls, with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis trailing well behind in an increasingly distant second. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, where the first primary will be held, DeSantis has crashed to fifth, according to a recent poll. Joining us now is Marc Short. He's a former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence and is rooting along and helping the former vice president as he seeks the Republican nomination. Marc Short, thank you for being with us.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Okay, what does Mike Pence want to, what does he need to do as they gather at the Reagan Library? What's he thinking?
I think, Chris, it's a perfect setting for him to continue to draw a contrast between traditional conservatives versus, I think, a more populist strain that seems to have taken hold inside our party. And having this debate at the Reagan Library is a perfect venue to have that discussion about where we're going to go in the future. I think that he'll continue to showcase that whether or not you're talking about fiscal policy, foreign policy, social policy, he has the experience and the character to take that job on day one. And I think that's a separation from other candidates on the stage.
In last month's debate, we saw a feistier version of the former vice president. He was spicy. He mixed it up with Vivek Ramaswamy and seemed to be less of the somber tone that he had sometimes taken as vice president. Do you expect more of that? Do you think that he needs to continue to mix it up? What's the tone that you hope he takes when he gets on stage?
Well, I don't usually use the adjective somber with Mike Pence. I think that I think he's had, really good debates against Tim Kaine, against Kamala Harris, and probably is underrated as a debater. But I think that in that particular case, I think Vivek was the foil, and I think that that basically showcased Vivek as a fraud. I mean, just last week, I think he came out with the acknowledgement that he'd have to self-deport himself based upon his own family history and what his policy is now for anchor babies. So I think that if that's the case again, then I think Mike will use that foil. But I don't think it's going to be an intentional looking to focus on Vivek. I think he'll be instead looking to focus on the future of our movement and the future of our country and where we as conservatives should be going.
Your former colleague, Mick Mulvaney, was doing some quick math here on set, Marc, looking at putting together the numbers of what it would take to put Donald Trump in peril for the nomination. Mick, do you think that Mike Pence could be the guy who could bring that coalition together?
I think everything that Marc just said about Mike is true. Mike is one of the most impressive, just the most decent human beings you are going to meet in this business. I continue to say, and I've said this to Marc privately, I'll say it now, I think trying to reference Ronald Reagan is a losing argument. I'm the oldest person here, and I didn't vote for Ronald Reagan because I wasn't old enough. I think that the party has moved beyond him, and it's just continuing to invoke Ronald Reagan as a losing argument. You're seeing it in the numbers. Mike should be doing better than he is in the polling.
Marc, are you guilty of zombie Reaganism?
You know, Mick is very old, but the reality is that it's less about Reagan. It's more about conservatism and whether or not we're a party that hails to the traditional conservative roots of our party that has always solved the problems that we face as a nation, or whether instead we're going to be a party that says, you know what, we're going to embrace a 10% tariff on all imports coming to the country. That was a position of the populist left for decades, and that seems to be the policy now with Donald Trump. Whether or not we're going to be the party that walks away from international commitments, whether or not we're the party that decides to turn its back on our spending problems facing our country. And the fact that, we're having a lot of discussion about a government shutdown right now. I mean, Chris, we have $33 trillion in debt. That's $100,000 for every person in this country. And yet now any candidate other than Mike Pence is talking about entitlement reform. Instead, we're talking about a shutdown over discretionary spending, and the delta between Democrats and Republicans is 1/3 of 1% of our total overall debt. And we're forcing a shutdown over it. We're not having an honest conversation with the American people. I think that's what's important is that Mike wants to do on the debate stage and showcase that, look, I want to address the real problems that are facing the Americans, or whether or not we're going to be a party that moves to the left and embraces the policies the Democrat left and Bernie Sanders were adopting just in the last election cycle.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.